I think, Pastor Simon, you can probably put it on present mode so the slides look a little bit bigger. My name is Esther. Thanks for having me join you guys again. And tonight we're going to be talking about what it means to have a healthy mind. And I just also wanted to remind people during this session time, it's going to be recorded. At the very end during their Q&A, it won't be recorded. So if you have some questions that are a little bit more personal, don't worry, those times won't be recorded, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and jump right into the first slide. And if you can go, and this is my poll of link there. You can go on your phone, and hopefully as you answer that question, the answers are supposed to pop up. So the question is, what is one thing you are secretly happy about that you don't have to do because of COVID-19? Okay, what is one thing you are secretly happy about that you don't have to do because of COVID-19?
I don't think there's anything I don't have to do because of COVID-19. Is there anything that you don't have to do because of COVID-19?
Go outside, work, wear a bra, and wear a box.
Let's see, make sure it's going. Has anybody been able to post yet? Oh, thank you.
It looks like we're on it, but it's asking for the presentation to begin. Does that sound familiar?
Anybody? Okay, let's see.
Same here. It says waiting for presentation to begin.
Okay. How about now? Oh no.
Looks good, looks good.
Is it working?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I don't know what's not showing on the PowerPoint, but I'm gonna read off what I have, okay? It says you don't have to commute to work. You don't have to drive kids to school and activities. You don't have to wear a bra. Large birthday parties, commuting to work. You don't have to shower every day. Shaking hands. In the past, I've had some people say like they don't have to see their in-laws as frequently. Holidays are much smaller. They can do what they want. They don't have to buy large gifts. Okay. So these are just some things. And so I just wanted to kind of set the stage because when it comes to having a healthy mind, it's sometimes just about perspective. And I know that COVID-19 is awful and it has impacted us in many ways that we wish it didn't. And so thinking about that and thinking about your perspective when it comes to how you live your life. Okay. So we're going to take a look at what we're going to be talking about today in the agenda. So we're going to be talking about just the struggle, and I want to kind of normalize the struggle and what's happening in everybody's life. We're going to talk about how to assess yourself or some questions that you can ask to figure out whether or not this is a good time to ask for help. I want you guys to be able to walk away with immediate tools that you can use right now in your life. And then the last one is just Q&A if you have some questions, okay? So let's go ahead and jump right into the struggle. And the first slide there is just a Bible verse because I find that it's calming for me. So let not your hearts be troubled, believe in God, believe also in me, John 14:1. I think when life gets really crazy, we start to lose sight of who God is and what he's capable of doing and what he's already done in the past. And so I want you guys to think about that for yourselves and what role he's played in your life and how he has helped you overcome things in the past. So the first study that I want to look at really quick is this survey that is by Kaiser. And it's called Kaiser Family Foundation, and you can look it up. Okay. And what they did is it was a survey that they just asked people several different questions. And I just pulled out one question in particular that I found super relevant to us. And it asked whether or not a person's mental health has been negatively impacted due to worry and stress over COVID-19. Okay. So in March, about 32% of adults said, yeah, my mental health has been negatively impacted. In May, 39%. In July of 2020, 53% of people are saying, yes, my mental health has been negatively impacted due to worry and stress over COVID-19. So let's look into a little bit more specifics, because some people might say and look at the statistics and think maybe it's just a small group of adults, okay? But if we look and if we break it apart, okay, over half, 59% in July, women who had kids under the age of 18. I see that there's some kids joining us tonight, and it's a hard balance. So we might think, so they are saying, yes, my mental health has been negatively impacted. Over 59% of moms with kids under 18. And then you think, okay, well, what about our dads? Are our dads not stressed out? Do they not worry? Are they doing anything here? Okay, they are. They're doing lots to hold down the fort with you guys. In March and in May, it was about 30%. Okay, about 30% of males reporting negative mental health impacts. In July, guys, this number jumped up to about 49%. 49% of our dads are saying, yes, my mental health has been negatively impacted due to COVID-19. And now if you have school-age children, you're starting to wonder like, okay, well, when is my kid going to go back to school? Some of us thought that this would and hoped that COVID-19 wouldn't last, or maybe the impacts wouldn't be this long. And we were hoping that our kids would go back to school. Okay. And then there was a polling question and it asked if schools do not reopen, they found that 67% of parents, if you have kids from the ages of 5 and 17, they're worried that their kids might fall behind socially and emotionally. So if you're a parent with a child around this age, you're not alone if you're starting to think, oh man, my kid is not going to know how to interact with their peers. Maybe you're worried because you only have one child and they don't share well with you. And so you're worried if, they need to learn how to share with other children. I put these statistics on here because I want us to take a step back, because in the midst of suffering and our life is hard and our mental health has been impacted, we think we're alone and we're the only ones where our life is awful like this. But if you take a look at this, it shows that, man, like, unfortunately, there's probably about at least half the population is somehow struggling when it comes to their mental health. So let's get some perspective about our struggle. I want you guys to ask yourself the question, what does it say about you when you struggle? I know that that is a little bit of an abstract question, but I find that a lot of people make assumptions when they struggle. They make assumptions about themselves. They make assumptions about other people. So think to yourself, what are some assumptions that you make when you struggle? And one of the ways that you can do this is by asking yourself, well, how do you respond to struggling? Okay, how do you respond to struggling? When something hard happens in your life, do you try to hide it? Do you try to deny that it's even happening? When you struggle, do you maybe just get angry and lash out at everybody around you? Or maybe you start to think, this isn't fair. I deserve better. I lived my life a certain way, and so I shouldn't have to struggle like this. Or maybe you start to compare yourself to other people. Social media, unfortunately, makes it real easy to do that. And so you start to feel even worse about your life because you see this mom of 5 kids who has a perfect house that's always clean somehow, and there's never dishes in the dishwasher, and all of our kids are dressed up really well and they have nowhere to go because it's COVID-19, but why do you look so good anyway? Okay, and there's this frustration sometimes that can be pent up there. Or maybe you think, oh, well, if I had that, or if my spouse was like that, or if my job was like that, then my life would be perfect too. So there's this bitterness that kind of crawls up a little bit within us. And then it's like a burning sensation, and then we get hot. Okay. So I want to lay the foundation a little bit when it comes to having perspective when it comes to struggling. Okay. And the first one is that you're human. You're human, and so it's okay to struggle. That's it. You're human. I have a lot of clients who come and meet with me, and I don't know if it's specifically because I work with a lot of the Asian population, but I find that many people struggle with perfectionism. They struggle with expectations. They struggle with ideals about how they think that they have to be living their life. So one of the phrases that I often teach my clients is, I'm a work in progress. You're a work in progress. So you don't have to know everything, and you don't have to have your life all put together, because you are a work in progress. Biblically, for those that are believers, we know that we're not going to be perfect, and we're never going to be perfect on this earth. It's not our job to be perfect. Christ already did the perfection. We'll get there in heaven, not right now. And plus, if we were perfect, we wouldn't need Christ, right? And so the goal of our life is not to think, oh, we don't need him, because we do ultimately need him for everything. Struggling is usually awful in the moment. It sucks, guys. It is awful. Our family is going through crazy amounts of things right now, and it is awful. I can't even sugarcoat it. It just sucks. Okay. It feels like the season of 2020 is so long. Other times it is passing by so quickly, but it is a season. Everybody will struggle at some point in their life. Everybody will struggle. I don't care who you are, what background, how many kids, or you don't have kids, or you're married, or you're not married, what kind of job you have. Everybody will struggle at some point in their lives. So there is no one right way to struggle. There is no one right way to struggle. You don't have to stuff your feelings. And I find that in many Asian cultures, we are taught very much so to stuff our feelings. And so when we have big feelings, we don't know what to do with them. So we just stuff them, and hopefully that they'll go away, or that people won't notice. Okay. Take a break. Find that a lot of things is happening in people's lives. You do not have to keep going at 100 miles per hour. You have the option of slowing down. That doesn't mean that you're not moving forward. It's okay to slow down. You can do hard things. I find that when people are faced with a lot of difficult struggles in their life, they forget this for whatever reason. People forget that you're capable of doing hard things. With Christ, immeasurably more, right? You're able and you're capable of doing hard things. So why does all this stuff matter? Okay, I want to look at a couple of studies. The first one that we find, I'm not even going to attempt to say these studies, their last names, okay? We find that when there is an increase of life adversity, hard things happening in your life, it's also associated with cognitive distortions, okay? And what I mean by cognitive distortions is just irrational thoughts that influence our emotion, negative thoughts that happen in our mind, things that oftentimes are not true, okay? So I want you to think about that for a second. Is your life hard right now? Think about whatever is happening in your life. Do you have anything that's hard, difficult in your life? Okay? Because if you are experiencing these things in your life, is it possible that your thinking and your mind has been changed because of it? Are you experiencing more negative thoughts in your mind because of what you're going through in life? High stress oftentimes is likely to activate that in our brains. these cognitive distortions that take place when we're going through difficult times in our life. When life sucks, we start to have all sorts of negative, evil thoughts about people, about ourselves, about our situation, right? Usually when people, their lives look fantastic, they're giving people the benefit of the doubt. You're opening doors for people. You're waving to strangers. Okay. When life sucks, you hate people who smile. Okay. So I want you to think, like, how has that impacted your thoughts? So the mind is complex and it is hard to kind of piece together. And so this is a definition that I would hopefully bring it together for us a little bit more. And it says that mind is defined as the element of a person that enables them to be aware of the world and their experiences, to think and to feel. Okay. So we have our thoughts, we have our feelings, we have our behaviors, we have our experiences, all those things. We're going to put those together and say, well, this is what we mean when we're talking about the mind. I want us to start off as we dive into the rest of the material with this phrase of taking responsibility. And honestly, when I see it and when I hear it for myself, I think of adults who are like, you need to take responsibility of your actions. And then I cringe because nobody wants to hear that, even if it's right. Okay. But I want to provide you a hopeful perspective of this responsibility. Okay. So if you take zero responsibility for your life, or if you take zero responsibility for your thoughts, guys, you have no options. You have no hope. Your life will probably be the same, if not get worse over time. If you can take responsibility in your life somewhere, even if it's a little bit, you can change something because you can do something different. There's hope there, hope that something could change. So when it comes to your mind, I know a lot of times people think, oh, well, I'm never going to change because I've lived my life this way for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, however long it's been. Or maybe it's too irritating to do so because it takes work. But I want you to know, and I want you guys to come from a place of, I can do new things, and let's be brave and let's be curious together. Sometimes our negative thinking feels like a cloud that's just following us. And it's like we can't shake it off. Think about your thoughts and in your life. Is there an area of your life that you can take responsibility for and do things differently? Can you think differently about a situation? Because how you think will impact the way that you feel, which will impact your behavior and how you live your life. So some things about thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, okay? The first one is, yes, you can control your thoughts, okay? God tells us we're supposed to take captive our thoughts, okay? We can control our thoughts, guys. I know that it seems difficult at times, but you can. You know, feelings, big word, lots of emotions. It sounds counterintuitive, but I'm going to tell you, don't trust everything that you feel, okay? And I know that that sounds weird coming from somebody who practices therapy, but don't always trust your feelings. Like sometimes we feel that our spouse is lying. I don't know. Okay. But that doesn't automatically, that doesn't mean that they're committing adultery. That doesn't mean that they're cheating on you, right? Your feelings may not be an accurate description of what's happening in your life. That's not to minimize your feelings. I'm just saying be cautious and be curious, because just because you feel something, that doesn't make it true. Okay. A heart is deceptive, guys. So think to yourself, how has your feelings impacted your behavior? When you wake up in the morning and you feel tired, oftentimes when people are tired or when they're hungry or when they're lonely, they don't tend to behave at a level that they're pleased with within themselves. So think to yourself, how has your feelings impacted your behavior? You can change the way that you feel, and your feelings will pass. It's not forever. I'm just going to add a little bit about anxiety because it seems like everybody is anxious these days, and that seems to be the hot topic that everybody comes to. Okay. Anxiety is a feeling, guys. It is an emotion. Okay. I know people, even with panic attacks, it seems like their life is ending, but it is temporary. Okay. Take a deep breath. It is a feeling because feelings cannot kill you. In the moment, it is awful. Sit with it. Work through them, and they will pass. Oftentimes we get more anxious because of, now I'm anxious because of what I'm anxious about, and now I'm worrying about because of what I'm worrying about. And then it grows exponentially. If anybody's had a panic attack, they get worse over time because you worry about having another panic attack. Okay. So it's not to say that these things that you don't want to receive treatment for, but I just want you to remember in the context of all things that a feeling is temporary. If you're married, you know, you're like in love with your spouse 1 minute and then you hate them more than anybody in this world, right? Your feelings are temporary. They will come and go. So let's talk about some ways that we can ask ourselves questions when it comes to assessing. And I started with the verse there again, okay? I think, and you guys, I think most of us are familiar with this. Our bodies are incredibly important. And one of the best ways that you can assess how you're doing is thinking about how is your body doing? Okay, so how's your body doing? How are you eating? How are you sleeping? Right? What, if you're married, what is your sex life like? Like thinking about your body, okay? How's your body doing? How do you measure that? So I had another polling question, okay? In the last 2 weeks, how many hours of sleep are you sleeping each night? Okay, so in the last 2 weeks, let me make sure that it is, okay, in the last 2 weeks, how many hours of sleep are you sleeping each night? The question's on the next slide, by the way. So I see some responses here, okay? Pretty good. It looks like the average right now is 6 to 7 hours. Okay. It's just a question to ask yourself. How are you sleeping each night? How many hours are you sleeping each night? What's the quality of your sleep? Are you having a hard time falling asleep? Are you having a hard time staying asleep? Right? Or maybe you wake up and you're just still so exhausted and tired. Sleep is a really good way to kind of assess how you're doing. I have to talk about the news really quick because of everything that's happening in the world. Okay. So lots of things are happening. I know I'm in Korea and it's like nonstop playing about the US, okay, and the elections and everything that's going on. And everybody has a huge opinion about what's going on. And this isn't a slide to get political, okay? So we could take a deep breath and you're all going to be fine. The question I want you to ask yourself is, how much is enough news coverage for you? Okay, that's it. How much is enough for you? And then I want you to put a number to it. Okay, I want you to put a number to how much news coverage is good for you. Is it 5 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour? I don't know. Maybe you work in the news industry, so you're like 24/7. Okay, it's going to look different for each person, but I want you to ask yourself, how much is enough news coverage for you? The second question I want you to ask yourself when it comes to the news is, how do you live your life differently because of the news you watch? Okay. The question is, how do you live your life differently because of the news you watch? Do you wake up first thing in the morning and you check your phone and you want to see the election results for each state and the breakdown, right? And you're like, no, I'm not going to check it anymore. And you find yourself back at your phone every chance you get. Maybe you like can't sleep at night because you're scrolling through and you're reading, and then you're on Facebook and you want to know what all your friends are saying. And then you're on Instagram and you're looking through all the stories and the memes and okay. Are you more anxious because of it? Is it impacting your sleep? Are you getting into arguments with your friends and family and you think, man, I don't love them anymore because of their beliefs, whatever it is. Okay. How do you live your life differently because of the news you watch? I'll share a little bit personally for me and my husband. We probably watch more news now than we have in the past, but we do our best to limit our news exposure because of my husband's job. We, several months ago, had a situation in our family where we, some of it ended up on the news, and I found that I was much more anxious because of it. So I had to just make a decision at that moment, because I was having a hard time being present with my family, that I just stopped watching it. Because the way that I was living my life differently was impacting my husband and my child. And so I just needed to take a break from the news. So I had to stop watching it. It's a season of my life. It's probably not going to be forever. We've had to do a lot of different things with our social media account at the time when the news was going on and with our family. And so for what worked for us at that time was putting healthy boundaries. So maybe it was just once a day that we would check in, and that was it. No more. We wouldn't be checking in. The TV would not be showing the news on it. I don't personally expose my toddler to the news because it can be super traumatizing depending on what's on there, right? And so that's my way of protecting and having healthy boundaries and limits within our household. So I want you to think about this to yourself. If you are getting riled up and you can't focus and you can't sleep and you're having a hard time eating and you're fighting with people around you, man, guys, it's a good time to put some healthy boundaries up to protect your mind. So here are some assessment questions that you can ask yourself, similar to the sleeping question, okay? These assessment questions in no means are a way to diagnose you or anything like that, but these are typical questions that you might find if you were to go to like a psychologist's office and they ask you and they just want to see how you're doing, okay? So I just pulled off some questions that you can ask yourself. So if you find that maybe you're like starting to check mark some of these things in your mind, it might be a good time to think to yourself, like, is this a good time for me to get help? Okay. So the first one is concentration. Is it hard for you to focus on something for a long time? Okay. Think about to yourself, maybe it's in your workplace, whatever you're working on right now. Are you having a hard time focusing on what's in front of you? Maybe your mind is wandering a lot. 2, do you feel guilty over the things that you've done or you should have done? Oh man, I should have done this. I should have said this. And you just feel this overwhelming guilt. Or maybe you feel like your life is the way that it is because you deserve it and now you're being punished for it. And so you go into life and you expect the other shoe to drop. You expect punishment. You expect bad things to happen in your life. Or maybe you're somebody who in the last 2 weeks and you find yourself being very self-critical of yourself, where you are constantly criticizing yourself. And you blame yourself for all the bad things that are happening in this world. Now, all these questions, as I'm reading these out loud to you, it's on like a scale, right? Or maybe you're like having 0 hard time concentrating all the way to 100, and you find yourself, you can't concentrate on anything for a short period of time. Okay. Are you feeling worthless compared to others? Do you find where you start to think, man, the other person has more worth than you do? How do you measure that? How do you feel about yourself? How about energy, where you feel in the last 2 weeks compared to last month, you have less energy than before? Or maybe you feel like, man, I never have enough energy ever. we talked about sleep, difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or you're unsatisfied with your sleep. Okay. Somatic means symptoms in your body. If you have aches and pains, okay. Confession, I have a heavy toddler and I hurt my back because he's heavy. So I've been having to get back treatment because he's heavy. And then the doctor said, you need to stop carrying him so much. And I was like, how do you not carry a 2-year-old? And he said, yeah, but it's your back. And it made it just very clear in that moment that if I wanted to take care of myself, that would mean temporarily I would have to hold my child less. And so that's something that I had to focus on and still am. Maybe you're experiencing stiffness. Are you sitting down a lot at your job? Do you have stiffness like in your shoulders or in your muscles, in your back, your legs? This one, grinding teeth. Anybody else grind teeth? Maybe you don't know, sleep next to somebody and ask them, do I grind my teeth? Okay, usually some sign of anxiety that's happening there. You can't stop worrying, where you're starting to worry about a lot of different things in your life. Are you worrying more? Are you worrying about a lot of different things? Do you have a hard time relaxing, hard time sitting still? Are you easily annoyed and easily irritable? And if you're like, oh, me never, I'm like super calm as a cucumber. Yeah, ask the people around you and say, hey, do I seem like I'm a little bit on edge? Okay. Do you feel like you have to walk on eggshells around me? Okay. And then fear. I'm afraid something bad might happen. Okay. This also has to do with experiencing anxiety. So these are just some things that I want you to ask yourselves. These are some things that can be red flags for you. I put this slide on suicide on here just because of the time that we're at in COVID-19. You guys can go back and take a look at it. I just put some red flags that are on there that could increase a person's possibility, okay, for death by suicide. I think probably all of us are isolated, and if not, almost all of us are experiencing some type of life difficulties or life events in our life. And so that puts us at an increased, these are the more red flags that you have when it comes to this, okay, is not good. And there's this myth that if you talk about suicide, that somehow you're going to plant the idea of suicide in a person's mind. It is actually the opposite, okay? So if you see it, you want to call it out and you want to talk about it. Another question I want us to ask ourselves is, have you increased your consumption of alcohol or substances? Okay, my husband and I, we live in San Diego, in California too. We know that people consume legal and illegal substances, whether you're Christian or not. Okay, so I'm very aware of that, working in a rehab myself. So asking yourself, we are in a culture of consuming alcohol, like wine is the new cool drink for moms. I'm not saying you can't drink, guys. I'm just saying you need to ask yourself, have you been increasing your consumption of alcohol? And these percentages are in no way like you're only supposed to drink this much, or, or maybe you're not supposed to. Okay. It was just a random thing of, if you're consuming alcohol. So think about that to yourself. And what does that mean for you? What does that say for you? Or maybe you're like, man, I can't go to sleep without my 2 glasses of wine. Okay. It's probably a red flag there. And one of the top questions that I probably get when it comes to, man, do I need help? Because they call me and they want to know if their life is messed up enough for them to see a therapist, right? That's the question. That's what they want to know. And so this is the question that I usually ask back. And it's annoying because they just want to answer no answer. And this is the question. And it's, if you lived your life this way for the rest of your life, would you be satisfied? Would you be happy? Would you be content? If your life looked like this for the rest of your life, are you going to be okay with that? Usually people are calling me because it's no. It is a resounding no. Man, there's no way that I want my life to look like this for the rest of my life. So think to yourself, there's like stages when people get help, right? You can catch, for instance, cancer at stage 1 versus stage 4, and the prognosis and the treatment plan is going to look very different. Okay. So the quicker you catch things, the better it is usually for that person. Asians usually wait and wait, by the way, guys. So just statistically, when we look, we tend to suffer in silence, okay? You don't have to do that. So let's look into some ways that you can cope, okay? So we talked about your mind and how to have a healthy mind. So how do you actually do this? I usually break this up into different weeks when it comes to my clients. So the first thing I tell my clients is, hey, this week I just want you to think about your thinking. Okay. I want you to think about your thinking. I know that that sounds weird, but I want you to specifically look for patterns. I want you to look for patterns of how you think in your life. I want you to think about how you interpret life events in your life. Okay. This isn't to judge your thoughts. This isn't to say, oh, wow, that was a really good thought to have, or man, that was awful and I'm a horrible person. Okay. Not at all. This is just think about your thinking. Just observe them. What do they look like? It's like you pick an apple from a tree, and what does the apple look like? Is it shiny? Is it dull? Is it taste sweet? Does it not taste sweet? Is it bitter? Do you see mold on there? Okay. It's not to say your thinking is bad or good. I just want you to look for patterns. So then the client comes in and they tell me how they did. They tell me and they show me maybe some of the patterns or how they interpret their thoughts. We have some people who jump to conclusions fast. They assume things really quickly. Okay. We have other people who take forever to think about things. Do you know somebody like that? Where you're like, just decide. Okay. So maybe you're a person that just takes a lot of time. The second week, I have them think about and ask themselves the question, how else can I think about this? Okay. How else can I think about this? You're driving and a person cut you off. That guy's a jerk. Ask the question, how else can I think about this? Maybe his wife is giving birth in the car. I don't know. Okay. How else can you think about this? You're training your brain to do something different, and this will take time, guys. And this is hard work. Imagine, I don't know how old you guys are, but however long you've been living your life and having certain thinking patterns in your life, you're trying to retrain your brain. So your brain is kind of like, you have a thought or you see something and you have an automatic thought. It's like a highway in your brain. And so now your brain knows, okay, well, when you see that, this is the thought to have. And so you just kind of go on that highway back and forth, and it's so easy and it's so fast, and it's because of what you know. You're trying to introduce something different. So instead of going the highway route, you're like, now I have to go local in my brain. And so you're trying to figure it out. And so it's okay for it to take time. It's okay for it to take time and for you to practice these things. You're introducing a different option in your brain. How else can I think about these things? And the third thing that I want you to do is to choose your thoughts. I want you to filter and think through these things, okay? Because now you notice these patterns in your mind. Now you thought of, well, how else can I think about this? So now you have some options. You have some options of how you can think about a certain situation, okay? So are you really a failure? Are you the worst person in the world? You can't get anything right. Okay. It's probably not true. How else can you think about it? I'm a work in progress. I'm learning. It's okay to make mistakes, right? So you're teaching your brain how else to think about these things. Another way that you can do this is finding the evidence for or against your thoughts. So what's the proof? What's the evidence for your specific thought that you have that you are a failure? And what is the proof of against it? Okay. Write it down. Ask somebody. I know that that seems incredibly vulnerable and awkward and weird, but it's probably better than you sitting with that negative thought your whole life and thinking, man, I'm a failure at life. So ask somebody, hey, do I fail at everything in life? And hear yourself say it out loud, because sometimes when you say things out loud, it just diminishes the power of whatever's in your mind. If somebody else said this to you, what would you say to your friend? I find that sometimes we're super critical of ourselves, and we tend to be much more compassionate and gracious to those around us, especially our loved ones. And so what would you say to your friend? And then asking yourself, is there a time where this hasn't been true? You think, I'm a failure, but hey, did you go to school? Did you graduate? Did you get a job? Did you, whatever it is, however you're measuring this, okay, think to yourself, has there been a time where it's not true? Because if it's not true, then it tells your brain, hey, you're not a failure. You don't fail at everything. Okay, thinking about a time where it's not true. Just for the sake of time, I want to go over, I'm going to skip the question because you can ask the question yourself. The calm place is just an activity that I do with my clients because we can't travel right now because of COVID-19. And with your mind, you have the ability to just kind of relax yourself, calm your body physiologically, because when we're stressed out, our bodies become stressed and we need tools to relax us. So this is a really, popular, famous thing that clinicians do. It's called the calm place or maybe the safe place. Okay, think to yourself what this is for you. Okay, so maybe your safe place is like a trip that you took before. So think about like, what does it look like? What colors do you see? Do you see any textures? What does it smell like? Is the air brisk or is there a home baked good being baked? What do you hear? The birds chirping, the sounds of cars passing by, your children laughing. Okay. And then how do you feel? At peace, calm, where you can feel like you can breathe, where now your shoulders are much more relaxed. Okay. When you're stressed out, you don't even have to tell anybody you're stressed out. And you can do this calm place activity in your brain and in your mind. You have kids. Oh yeah. You want to learn how to help calm your kids down? Ask them these questions, right? Our kids are very sensory oriented. That's why that's the hot topic to teach kids things like this. Okay. Because it works. Our minds and our bodies are connected. We knew that. Okay. The next couple ones are also ways that you can just mindfully scan your body. So like I talked about, hey, like notice your shoulders. Are they tensed up here? Are they relaxed? Do you have like the little lines in your forehead because you're like, okay. Okay. Or are you relaxing that? I tense my jaw up. Okay. So sometimes I have to purposely chew gum to like relax my jaw. So these are just some ways that you can notice these things in your body. I want to talk really quick about medication because I know that it's a hot topic and it is a hard thing to wrap our minds around when we're not used to taking medication for maybe our mental health. Okay. You might have physical needs that need to be met. Take medication then if you have those things. Okay. Obviously talk with your psychiatrist. Okay. I know that you can go to like your primary care physician for certain medications, but it's probably best. We find the best form of treatment is the combination of medication and therapy. So let's do both because you don't want to just numb out symptoms. You don't want to just act like they're not there because they are there. And medication might just be a Band-Aid, but you want to really work through what's underneath. Okay. If you identify as Asian, you might want to ask your physician, hey, did you prescribe me this amount of medication knowing my ethnicity? Okay. What we find in research is Asian Americans typically need a smaller dosage of medication for effectiveness compared to other races. Okay. So you may need to just take less. Ask them if they're familiar with it. If they're not, maybe you find somebody who's familiar with treating your race. Okay, so think about that. And just be aware of the impact it has on your body. So tell your doctor the symptoms that you're experiencing. Hey, I'm super tired. I can't focus. I feel like everything is kind of fuzzy. I don't feel anything. Sometimes that these are some of the side effects. So tell them and work through some of these things. I'm going to go to, I think we all know this, but for me and my husband, nothing happens if it's not in the calendar. So whatever big meeting you had, it's not happening if it's not in the calendar. So don't ask me if I knew about it. Did you put it in the calendar? That's usually my question. Okay. So this also goes in for self-care. sometimes we just have to schedule self-care, and maybe that's the best way for it to actually happen. So look at your calendar and think, have I scheduled in self-care? Whatever that is for you. I'm at Philippians 4:8 here. I find a lot of these coping skills is very much grounded in God's word. And I think that that's why it works, because it's based on truth. Okay. So it says, whatever's true, whatever's honorable, whatever's just, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Okay. So think about these things. And then now you have, famous, clinician, psychologist, therapist. I'm on the next slide here, and it says there's something famous called the 3 good things. Okay. And basically they're thinking about the good things that happened in their life, which I think is, there's a reason why God tells us to say, hey, think about these things. Think about what you're grateful for. Okay. It makes an impact on our lives. That's why. So the 3 good things, you can look them up, but I have just a short slide on them here. Things that can change your thinking, that can change your emotions, that can change your behavior. What are 3 good things that happened to you today? Write them out. 3 good things that happened to you today. And then I want you to reflect and ask yourself, what was your role? What role did you play in the 3 good things that happened today? And then the last thing is I want you to ask is, how do you feel? How do you feel about it? Because oftentimes when we notice more positives, we tend to do more positives. Okay. You think about our kids, and this is the same thing with adults. When you feel good, you tend to do good. When your kids don't feel good and they didn't get good sleep and they're not eating well, and they don't do good. I expect my child to have a tantrum because he does not feel good. It's the same thing with adults. When our adults are not doing good, it's usually because they do not feel good. And let me tell you, there are many adults who don't even realize how they're feeling. And so sometimes that's just the first step of noticing how you're feeling. That protects you, that protects your mind. Because again, your thoughts will impact your feelings, which will then impact your behaviors. Okay. And I just have a last quote there. And this is from Dr. Julie Hayden. If you've met with her before, and I think she spoke at your church. Okay. This is something that she says. She says, sometimes we gain ground. Your life is fantastic and it's moving forward. You're hitting your goals. You're reading the Bible every day. You're doing, small groups, and you're coming to these talks, and life is fantastic. Okay. Sometimes we hold ground. You're like, crap, things are going wrong. Okay. Don't give up. Think to yourself, what do I need to do for this day to not go in that awful direction? Okay. Because maybe how you started the day does not mean that you have to end the day that way. So sometimes we just hold ground. And the last time is you blew it. You yelled at your spouse. You yelled at your boss, your kids. You just blew it. So sometimes we have to minimize our losses. Okay. What can you do right now to pull it together? Go wash your face, smack your face a little bit. Okay. Pull it together. Stop. Minimize your losses. Okay. So I just wanted to leave you guys with those things and leave a little bit of time for some Q&A. This is our office number and my email account and our counseling agency there. If you have any questions, feel free. You guys can always email me. You can use the chat box there, and you can message me privately if you want, or you can just post the question to the group. You can also unmute yourself if you'd like to. I think Pastor Simon's going to stop the recording, and then we'll